Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy football strategy show every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here as always with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinbold.
How you doing, Dan?
Oh my God! I thought you were going to go into the cowboy thing.
I
I mean, we don't have Ross, so we don't have anyone to do that.
I hope
much.
Just Bob still says though, "Hello, gentlemen," hello, Ross.
I sure hope so. Well, our condolences go out to Ross the boss. He had a death in the family, so we are thinking of him. We're sorry he's not here with us. But Casey, let's talk about this time of year in fantasy football. We're getting close to trade deadlines.
Most of them are.
You thought I was talking about November, huh?
Hey, and the World Cup's next week, so there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. We could talk about any number of things, and as people bring up comments, we'll certainly talk about it. But I'm thinking more about fantasy football right now, the time of year. Just Bob says, prayers sent, Ross. Thank you so much, Just Bob. Very nice of you. It's great to have you here with us. So this time of year, some leagues have gotten past their trade deadline. There's nothing that you can do in terms of trades. Albert Merquin saying good afternoon. Good to see you, Albert. Thanks for being here with us. And let us know if you have questions. Just Bob saying hello, too. Let us know if you have questions, guys, or comments. We're here to discuss this whole thing.
I mean, obviously, I think we're going into, if we look at the fantasy football season, there's different stages to the season. This is the kind of the latter half of the majority of the season because we're a week and a half or 2 weeks away from the playoffs at this point. Right. So a lot of teams, a lot of leagues, there's 2 or 3 teams in each league that already have their fate sealed. Like in our MFSN Sleeper League, I've gotten very fortunate with health and I'm 10-0. So
that's pretty good.
I'm pretty much guaranteed to make the playoffs, right? And so I when I'm looking at the season, I'm looking at, I don't care if guys are healthy now, right? So I'll look on the waiver wire for injured players who might be back in 2 to 3 weeks because I'm already planning on making sure I have as deep of a bench as I can coming into the playoffs. Or I might be looking to block other managers from getting certain players. So I might pick them up and stash them even if I don't need them. And so strategy becomes even more important, I think, at this stage of the season. You've spent all season trying to just build your roster as much as possible. And now is when the strategy of win or go home kind of becomes more important.
So with that in mind, if let's say you're a mid-level team in terms of your record, let's say you're 5-5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make the playoffs and you've got somebody huge on bye. Would you make a trade at this point in the season? I'm talking redraft leagues.
Yeah. So like the Dolphins are on a bye this week. If you had one of their receivers or Tua, would you consider trading them? I might, honestly, if I could get enough value, if I could get, like, for example, if somebody like me who's 10-0 is out there and is willing to say, I will give you this, 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 and this for Tyreek Hill, because I don't need a bench come playoff time necessarily, and you need the depth now to try to push for the playoffs, I would probably do it on both sides of that argument. Like if I could get Tyreek Hill for, I don't know, pick 3 players like Travis Etienne, maybe Mark Andrews if I have a really good tight end somewhere else, and a mid-level quarterback, yeah, I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you can get that trade done entirely because you picked some guys that may be a little too high end, but
yeah, but
you could. I mean, let's say it's not Mark Andrews, and say
I was thinking off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's say it's Etienne and let's say Hollywood Brown's coming back, and you're like, I don't know how he fits in as much. They've got DeAndre Hopkins, they've got Rondale Moore.
Yeah, let's say if it's Tyreek Hill and you want to give up like Amon-Ra St. Brown or David Montgomery, who, because Khalil Herbert just went IR, is going to be the primary running back in Chicago. Like, if you have that depth, why wouldn't you try to push that and get an upgrade?
Absolutely. And so I like what you said also, because we're often trying to match up teams. When we're looking for trades, you're looking for a team that matches up with you. So don't just think of the guy who's 10-0 as somebody who's irrelevant to you. That's not true. Actually, there's somebody who can help you out. If you're a mid-level team and you need some depth, and you got to go for it right now. This is the time of the season to go for it.
Right.
So this is why we like to talk trades. There's so much strategy. So let me ask you another question. For people who are, let's say they're pretty much out of it, what's their responsibility to a league in terms of trades?
In terms of trade, I don't
I'm
think
talking
they
redraft.
have.
Redraft.
Yeah, I don't think they have any responsibility to the league in terms of doing trades.
I'm
But
talking about not doing them. Do they have a
oh,
responsibility
you
to
mean to
not do
not?
trades?
Yeah. Look, I think if you're out of the playoffs, you probably shouldn't be trading. You should be trying to put the best team together every week with the goal of maybe preventing somebody else from making the playoffs, being the spoiler, so to speak. But it would be kind of like, for me, if I know I'm in the playoffs and I have the best team, and then somebody who is like 2-8 suddenly trades, Justin Fields, who all of a sudden got super hot and super relevant, for Tom Brady and
Well, if they help one of your major competitors and there's no seeming reason why,
and it doesn't help them,
exactly.
I guess.
So listen, I understand people can get frustrated this time of year if they're out of the playoffs, but I do think you have a responsibility. If you have no real motivation, you shouldn't mess with the league, and especially don't do it out of like personal vendettas, because that can
Right.
lead
I
to
would
some
rather
ugly
I
stuff.
would rather you just not update your team and just lose every week because you have
Right.
no interest than make kind of league altering trades that don't alter the league for you.
All right, now let's talk about Justin Fields, because I was thinking about major topics of today, and Justin Fields is a major one. Actually, we're going to get to it in a second, but we got a comment coming in. I want to get to the comments so we don't fall behind. We'll get back to Justin Fields in a second. Michael Bernardo says needed a wide receiver really bad after the Cup injury.
Oh, sorry about that for you.
It's a very, very tough injury, especially at this time of year, and wanted an upgrade over Kyler. So I traded Kelsey and Jeff Wilson for Joe Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, and Cole Kmet. Good trade. Let me look at that. I think so. I think I like that trade.
I'm not a fan of trading Travis Kelce, obviously, because with Andrews hurt, he's the undisputed number one tight end in the league. Kmet has 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So certainly that kind of dovetails to what we were about to talk about with
Josh Fields.
Justin Fields.
Fields.
Josh, Justin?
Why are we all confused about
I don't know. But look, Joe Burrow is obviously an upgrade over Kyler at this point, because the reason Kyler was such a high rated quarterback for the last 2 or 3 years was because he ran. He's not running this year, and a 5'10" pocket quarterback just doesn't really, unless you're Drew Brees, it doesn't promote like fantasy success. So getting Burrow there is incredibly helpful, especially because he should be getting Jamar Chase back in time for the fantasy playoffs. Fingers crossed. CeeDee Lamb is a lottery ticket type of guy. He can have great games and then he can look horrible. And Kmet has been solid. So I don't think it's a bad idea, because you're trying to replace Cooper Kupp. I mean, that's
right.
That's a blow. So
I think it's a good trade for you overall. I will say this, and I don't know why this happens, but it always happens. I had CeeDee Lamb in a keeper league. I traded him, and wouldn't you know it, the minute I played the guy I traded it to, CeeDee Lamb had the game he had last week. It just happens all the time. And meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb was starting against me in the MFSN league as well. I don't know why it is. Michael, I'll tell you the next time this is happening with CeeDee Lamb, and you'll know. Go deal for him. But I do think actually overall, that looks like a good trade to me. And it's a gutsy trade too. And sometimes you got to be gutsy if you want to win. I think bringing in Cole Kmet at this point is a good idea.
Yeah, and here's what you have. I think CeeDee Lamb and Cole Kmet together replace Travis Kelce's production, right?
Yeah.
Gives you just as high of a floor and maybe a little bit higher ceiling. And I think that Joe Burrow is obviously better than Jeff Wilson, who has a timeshare in Miami, who's on bye this week. So
okay, now we have another piece of news coming in. This is from Cagenomics. He says Bills game moved to Detroit, so it's now indoors. I can play Cooper and Gabe now. And
yeah, Cagenomics was on the show Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so part of it was a question of who he should play considering the weather forecast was so bad. And so, yes, you're right. Now you can play because they're going to be in the dome. So you can play them both.
Okay, now I don't know where I got the name Josh Fields. I said Justin Fields in the first place. It is
I did.
Justin Fields.
Yeah, I know you
I don't know
confused
what
me.
happened. I just
Okay.
wanted to. We always correct things on this show because we want to keep our credibility. Okay, Big O Dog FC says you guys think I should trade Mark Andrews and Jalen Waddle for Austin Eckler. Okay, now the very first response I would have to that is it really depends on your roster. Big
My
Dog,
first response to that is yes, because I'm
that's your first
assuming
response.
if you're doing it, you don't have depth at running back, and you have depth at
It's
both other
a good
spots.
assumption because most people make pretty intelligent,
And Eckler is a pass
trade forays.
catching back, so he's a 3-down back. So he gets 4 to 6 targets a game too. So if it's a PPR league, he might get as many. He might also help you there as well. So
Okay, go
I
ahead.
would say yes.
I would say yes in absence of knowledge, but it could be that we look at your roster and we say, actually, I think you may be overlooking that this player's on the rise. So obviously take your team context and the league context into account. But in a vacuum, that does sound good to me. I do want to get back to the Chargers and talking about what is wrong with them right now. We're going to get to that in a second, but Eddie Phillips has a question. Hello, fellas. Need a flex full PPR Christian Watson, which is another piece of news from this year. Huge week last week. Michael Pittman, Gabe Davis, or Najee Harris. Thanks. Okay, so you can only pick one. It's full PPR.
And Christian Watson plays tonight, correct? Because tonight's the Tennessee Green Bay game. So
yeah, to me, this choice is actually surprisingly easy, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to say yet. Case, I'm going to let you go first.
Matt Ryan is the quarterback again in Indianapolis. And so I would probably lean towards Michael Pittman because he's a possession style receiver. And Ryan is going to probably rely on that. And we're doing a PPR. Najee Harris, I mean, he had a good game last week. I think it was 20 carries and 99 yards or something to that effect. But Jaylen Warren is the pass catching running back in Pittsburgh. So if it's PPR, he's not going to get you any PPR points. Gabe Davis can easily have 5 receptions for 134 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he can also have 2 receptions for 23 yards and no touchdowns. So for me, and Christian Watson had a great game, 3 touchdowns last week, but like,
there's no one here you can clearly trust.
And Michael Pittman to me is the most reliable of that crew.
Okay. And I understand where you're coming from with that. I do think that there's a lot of upside in a lot of these players. To me, Najee Harris is immediately out from a full PPR perspective. He just hasn't been good enough just in general. And, now he's losing time to Warren. But I think that given that none of them are that reliable, the one that I go for then is the upside. Because the stats you just listed for Gabe Davis are the same stats that the others could come up with. So I think you might as well go upside. Not only that, but guess who Gabe Davis is playing? The Cleveland Browns. They give up points to everybody.
Oh, so you're going Gabe Davis. Okay.
I'm going Gabe Davis. I'm also wearing a Buffalo Bills shirt. And there's multiple reasons for that. I'm slowly, possibly gravitating towards becoming a Bills fan. And you know what? I apologize to Bills fans everywhere. Because if that happens, it will be
Scott Norwood is going to come back and be the kicker again as soon as you announce your fandom.
But listen, if Gabe Davis was playing in a blizzard, I would not call him. But now they're inside. He's got the biggest upside. He's playing the Browns. The other guys have just as much chance to dip as low as his floor for me. Okay, Jacob Anders says, need a wide receiver this week in PPR. Brandon Cooks, Paris Campbell, Donovan Peoples-Jones, or Watson tonight.
Donovan Peoples-Jones would be my first thought because he's consistently getting 8 to 10 targets from Jacoby Brissett. They're now playing indoors. And it could be a shootout because Buffalo obviously can put up points. Next would be Paris Campbell because he's the king of the 3 to 5 yard slant and run after the catch. And Matt Ryan doesn't throw the ball much farther than 5 yards. So he's going to be looking for him a lot. It would go in that order. Brandon Cooks would be an immediate no for me. Christian Watson is still a no for me. He has to do it more than once for me to trust him.
I could totally see that. To me, it's between Donovan Peoples-Jones and Watson. It's really hard for me as a Browns fan to rely on any Brown. I mean, I'm sorry to say it. We all have certain biases. And one thing I want to say as fantasy players, you've got to live with whatever decisions you make. I could not live with playing a Browns receiver and losing. I mean, could I live with it? Yes, it's not that serious. But ultimately, I would roll the dice on Christian Watson. What I don't like about it is happening tonight. I don't like Thursday night games. So I could see going Donovan Peoples-Jones.
And I just
or
look,
Watson.
I see game script when you're going against Derrick Henry. I could see Green Bay saying we have to try to play the time of possession game too, and they have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, and they hand it off a ton.
Well, some of
And
it's also going to depend on your matchup, right? I mean, if you're playing against a really, really good team, I'd be more inclined to play Christian Watson because you need the upside. If you're playing against a team that really should lose to you, I'd play Donovan Peoples-Jones because Watson could lay an egg. He's been doing it all year. I think he's for real. I think he's going to be good, but is he going to be good this week? Not sure. Okay, Nigel Millisev says Lamb and Jeff Wilson for JT. Okay, this is a trade consideration. I have Amon-Ra, Pittman, Garrett Wilson, Chase
Gabe
on
Wilson.
the IR. What's that?
Garrett, yeah, you're right. Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, yep. C-Mac, James Conner, and Rashad White. 0.5 PPR. Okay, Lamb and Wilson for JT.
So you would
So he's using the wide receiver depth to upgrade. Let me ask you. So what do we think about Jonathan Taylor rest of the year? And some of it depends on your playoff positioning too. If you're 4-6 and you need to get into the playoffs, upgrade. Get your best roster out there right away.
Look, I scratched my head with the Jeff Saturday hiring as much as everybody else did, but the guy was an offensive lineman in front of like Edgerrin James and Marshall Faulk. Like the guy knows how to. I think he can help the run game, and that can only help Jonathan Taylor.
Well, and look what Jonathan Taylor did last week.
And I think Matt Ryan helps Jonathan Taylor. So you put those two together, and I think, look, at this point, if you can deal from depth, and Lamb is depth, I think he's your second best wide receiver after Amon-Ra until you get Chase back. And so if you can go into the playoffs with Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, and JT, yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat. And you already have Christian McCaffrey. So like you're going to have Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, and Rashad White, who's going to be the number one back in Tampa by next week, with Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Michael Pittman, and Jamar Chase in the playoffs. You're pretty
if you're in a good playoff spot, I think it is a great trade. I also think that you're cashing in on CeeDee Lamb's game last week. And if I were a CeeDee Lamb owner, I'd be cashing in now because he's pretty inconsistent, So, I think it's a great trade. All right. Then Nigel said,
I don't know who
RSD 100, but I don't know what that is. Do you?
That might be junk.
Might be junk. Okay. Junk. Well, Nigel, let us know if we missed something. Okay. Big Dog is back. He says, "Hey again, guys. The trade is going to go through." Let's remind. This was the trade for Mark Andrews and Jalen Waddle for Eckler. Okay, so trade is going to go through. I have Gabe Davis, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, and Jalen Waddle.
Then yes, you make that trade.
Wow. And Higbee will be my new tight end. My running backs didn't have much depth. Listen, yes, I think so.
It's a big step back from Mark Andrews to Tyler Higbee. Don't get me wrong, but he might be the top target right now in the Rams with Cooper Kupp being hurt. So
it's true.
His value obviously, I think, takes a bump when you're the guy who has 60% of the target share is suddenly, I'm pretty sure, shut down for the season. Considering their record, I don't see them saying, let's play him in some meaningless games the last 2 weeks.
He's not coming back.
So to get Austin Eckler, who to me is a top 3 or 4 running back the rest of the season, is a really smart trade for you.
I mean, not only that, but Mark Andrews, as good as he is, he's had a couple of duds of games. He really
with
has.
how well Isaiah Likely has played when he's been out, I think they're going to try to rest him a little bit here and there, and he might not be a target monster going forward.
Well, and that's another thing to factor in is real NFL teams who are looking at their own playoff schedule. They don't care about fantasy sports. They care about whether their team is healthy.
It's pretty insensitive of them, but it's true.
It is. It's very obnoxious. Now, okay, let's back up while we're waiting for a couple more questions. What is wrong with the Chargers? I need to know because first of all,
I mean, injuries have killed them. They've lost. Didn't they lose their starting right tackle early on, and he hasn't been back? Keenan Allen has played like 2 games all season. Mike Williams has been hurt for stretches of time.
Now Everett's out as well.
now Everett's out
And Herbert himself he was playing, but he was hurt.
that game was tough to watch when he hurt his rib, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I just think injuries caught up to them. I mean, and everybody's saying what's wrong with them. Maybe what's wrong with them from a fantasy perspective, but I think they're still second in the AFC West. Like they're still a playoff team at this point.
Right.
So despite all the injuries, they're playing pretty well.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, but I do mean from a fantasy perspective because
but injuries killed them. Like the Eagles have been remarkably lucky all year. Like nobody's gotten hurt. And I'm fortunate to that because I've drafted Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown in a majority of my leagues because I just like the upside there. But some teams have a lot of health, others not so much, and the Rams, the Chargers, not so lucky. The Bucks had some injury issues with Godwin and with their offensive line. And so it just depends on the team.
Yes. And there should be some kind of injury designation for divorce. Tom Brady has been injured.
Emotional injury.
An emotional injury. Two psychologists talking about fantasy sports. That's naturally going to come up.
Yes.
I also I'm wearing a Bills shirt and I kind of happened to put it on, but I was thinking about this game last week, the Bills-Vikings game. Did you get to catch
Oh my gosh.
it?
I watched some of it. It was amazing. Like, but one of the things it showed is that Josh Allen does have accuracy issues, man. Like some of the, I mean, he had good stats at the end. That interception at the end was horrible, but like some of those were because like on one play, Stephon Diggs looked like he went up about 13 feet in the air to catch a ball with one hand and still come down and run for 3 or 4 more yards. Like I'm wondering how much he gets bailed out because he has incredible weapons around him.
I mean, it's a good question. And I think as a fantasy sports player, you've got to gauge what's causing what. I think as an example, when Tyreek Hill was traded from the Chiefs, there were some people who thought Tyreek Hill was going to be majorly downgraded because he's not playing with Patrick Mahomes. What happened instead is Tua looks great because Tyreek Hill's there.
Yeah, it depends and I think that depends on a little bit on the franchise itself because there are some coaches who are better at designing an offense based on the skills of their players. And then there are some coaches who are stubborn and say, this is the offense I want to run. So I'm going to run it regardless of whether the pieces fit to make it effective. I'm talking mostly about Atlanta, by the way, on that one, because they don't let Mariota throw the ball more than like 17 times a game. And he's got Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Cordero Patterson out of the backfield, who was a wide receiver for 10 years. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, let's talk about that kind of thing as a fantasy manager. When you've drafted certain assets and you see that a team is playing a certain way, how soon do you pivot to maybe shift away from that team?
I guess it depends. I mean, we're talking redraft leagues because, like, if it's a dynasty league and I have a stud weapon who's just having a bad year, I'm just going to eat it, right? Because I'm hoping next year that coach will be gone. I have to give it 3 or 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, because what I'm looking for is, is the coach going to adjust the game calling as the season progresses? Is the team winning anyway? Because if the team is winning and the game calling is hurting my fantasy asset, then I'm like, yeah, this coach isn't going to be motivated to change. I'm more likely to pivot away. But if the coach is losing consistently or the team is losing consistently, I'm hoping that there is some modifications made that will change the outlook.
So, okay, let's get back to Josh Allen though. You're recognizing that it could be that the weapons around him are making him at least somewhat better than he necessarily would be. Let's talk keeper and dynasty. Where do you have him among quarterbacks
in a keeper or dynasty league?
Yeah,
he's still top 3 or 4. He's only like 26 years old, I think, or 27.
Yeah.
And look, I said this on Tuesday, a quarterback that runs, he's their goal line back, for crying out loud. He doesn't have to have accuracy issues and he can still get you 2 to 3 touchdowns a game because he's going to run 2 in from 4 yards out because he's a linebacker who can throw the ball.
Right.
He's just huge.
Well, I think increasingly quarterbacks who can run are the key.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top quarterbacks in the last several weeks, it's Josh Allen, it's Jalen Hurts, it's Justin Fields. It's these guys who, and Patrick Mahomes can even run. Like, he doesn't have to as much because he can throw the ball from almost any angle through any spot. It's crazy to watch him throw, but his legs keep plays alive
He's
at
like an
least.
ultimate Frisbee player.
He kind of is. So I do think that he's a top 3 quarterback. Like, if I'm doing dynasty, I'd rather have him over Herbert or Burrow or, one of the more statuesque, we'll call them, quarterbacks, because I want that dual threat.
Okay, let's talk about other headlines from this week. I mean, the Bills Vikings game was completely insane to watch, and of course, we should mention Justin Jefferson's crazy 4th down catch.
Yeah, he had one too. Yeah, and Stephon Diggs, they both had great catches.
Yeah.
Like, they're, to me, 2 of my favorite wide receivers to watch play the sport.
Yeah, it's pretty fun to watch them in the same game, no less, and have it go that crazy.
Yeah,
What
that
are
was crazy.
what are some of the other headlines though for you? I'll give you one, and then I want to hear from you. But like, to me, what happened in Arizona's backfield this last week
With
was
Eno
really
Benjamin
interesting.
being released. Yeah, what happened there?
I do not know. I mean, that
Yeah.
to me seems to suggest something went on behind the
Yeah, it
scenes
had to
in
be a
some way.
personnel, a player specific problem.
Because 2 weeks ago, James Conner was out,
And he
Eno
was the
Benjamin
starter.
was starting, and it looked like maybe he was carving out a real role for himself. Then, listen, I actually played Eno Benjamin last week out of desperation. Got nothing. Now I was
Yeah.
in total desperation mode because I was in keeper league where I dealt away most of my parts, so I wasn't supposed to win anyway. But got nothing. Then he gets released, and I'm sitting there with a roster spot that I can't even cut him to pick up somebody new because I started him.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating. James Conner, meanwhile, he gets 22 carries
Yeah.
and
He's
over
the
100 yards. It's clear that he is not only the lead back, but one of the
he's
elite backs
I
in the
mean,
NFL.
yeah. When he's healthy, he's always produced. I mean, even when he was in Pittsburgh, when they gave him a chance, he produced because
Well,
Le'Veon Bell
especially
went
when he was in
out.
Pittsburgh. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was great there.
he was awesome.
So,
The other, I think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire being suddenly benched and Isaiah Pacheco being elevated to the lead back in Kansas City is big, because if you remember, like, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was scoring a touchdown every game. I don't know what happened over the last, 3 weeks that he's fallen so far out of favor that he's not even, like, I don't think he got a point. I don't think he played much, but 2 or 3 snaps. So I think the running back changes in general were a big theme this weekend. You got Rashad White is suddenly taking over for Leonard Fournette. You got Pacheco taking over. You got James Conner and Eno Benjamin. You have Khalil Herbert getting hurt. So now, who was looking like the more dynamic back in Chicago. So David Montgomery is certainly now the every down back. Jonathan Taylor playing better. Najee Harris putting up good numbers for the first time almost all season. So running backs, to me, were kind of the biggest story of the weekend.
and they often change so much. Okay, we've got a question coming in from Big Trev. Hey guys, need 2 of these guys: Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kadarius Toney, Rondale Thielen. Thank you. Okay, two of these guys. I'm assuming this is a standard league because you didn't specify
No,
otherwise.
even if it's PPR, I don't think that changed the value much on these
Not
guys.
much. Not with this list.
Who are the Vikings playing? Let's see.
Who are the Vikings playing?
I'll tell you in
feel
a
like they're
second.
still playing the Bills.
I know they are
After
playing
that,
Dallas this weekend, who just
Hmm.
gave up 3 touchdowns to Christian Watson, but they are typically a very good defense.
Well, I do think also the Christian Watson thing, I think, caught them by
He
surprise.
said it's a full PPR league, by the way.
Full PPR. Okay. Well, to me, I would start off with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Actually, I can't believe I'm saying that as a Browns
Yeah.
fan, but the amount of target share, I'm not sure I would start him if it wasn't full PPR, but given that it is, I think he's a target monster right now. I think I'd probably go with Rondale, but
Yeah, I like Rondale too, because he plays in the slot there for Arizona, and Hopkins takes a lot of the focus away from him. But they are going against San Francisco, and that defense
I
always
didn't realize
scares
that
me.
matchup.
I think I would probably, and I hate to say this because I'm a Giants fan, I'd probably go with Kadarius Toney, because, like, he got like he got targeted on like 60% of the routes he ran in the game on Sunday. Like already he's trusted. You got Juju Smith-Schuster, who's out with an injury, who's on the concussion protocol. You got Mecole Hardman, who's missed time the last 2 weeks. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think, got one target last week. So he's got to throw to somebody, and he's proven that he trusts Tony. And so, like, give me the guy Pat Mahomes wants to throw the ball to all day.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of like my Gabe Davis point earlier. When
Right.
you've got a bunch of options that are really just a dart throw, pretty much, go for the upside.
Yeah.
And Thielen to me doesn't have the upside anymore. He once did. He once actually was consistent on top of upside. So I think given the matchup, I probably would go Donovan Peoples-Jones and Tony. And we have some agreement. Cajunomics says I would go Donovan Peoples-Jones and Tony, but that's just me. It's not just you. It's also me. But thank you for weighing in on that. Let's see. We got our next comment coming in from Big Dog. He says, my running backs are now, because he got the trade through, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, and Jeff Wilson. Should I try to trade Aaron Jones or keep him? All right, let's go back and look at your team. Let me see if I can find that. Go ahead, Case.
I don't know who your fourth running back is, because most leagues are 2 running back starters and then a possible flex or 2. So I would not, if I had those 3 running backs, unless my fourth one was a Rachaad White or somebody like a Devin Singletary, somebody who has the potential to have significant impact on a game, I'm not trading one of my 3 running backs. I don't think that's enough depth to trade.
Well, not only that, but actually, when you think about it,
Jeff Wilson is still in a timeshare with Raheem Mostert. Last I checked,
he's a little bit on the injury prone side. That could happen at any time. I mean, that's true for anybody. But you just made the trade to get better running back depth. I wouldn't trade away from that now. It's like you solved the problem you wanted to solve. I would stick with it. Let us know, Big Dog, if that makes sense to you. Oh wait, he also has, looks like, Michael Carter. What do we think of
timeshare with James Robinson?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Jets traded for James Robinson to give him the majority of the carries. I want 2 lead running backs if I can.
If anything, I would deal Jeff Wilson, not Aaron Jones.
Or Wilson and Carter together and see if you can get
a slight upgrade.
Like a David Montgomery type who's going to be an every down back.
I think that's a great idea. And not only that, keep in mind, Casey and I love 2-for-1 deals because you get the roster spot.
Then you get a waiver wire spot. Yeah.
Okay. Moke says, would you trade JT, Lockett, and Kupp for Kenneth Walker, Devontae, and Rondale Moore?
No.
To me, I think I would. So why would you not?
I wouldn't, because the Las Vegas Raiders offense has been atrocious. And as much as as much as Lockett has a history of being a little inconsistent, Geno Smith has been awesome this year in getting him the ball. Kupp is hurt. Yes, you're going to lose Kupp. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
maybe it's not as clear as I said at first when I'm looking at it, but
I mean, you might say the Raiders offense is not looking good as an offense, but if you look at what Devontae Adams is doing, it's great. I mean, I would pounce all over this. Kupp is going to be useless from now on. He's not coming back.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back either.
So you're trading JT and Lockett for Kenneth Walker and Devontae, and you're also getting Rondale Moore out of it. Honestly, I probably would rather have Kenneth Walker and Devontae than JT and Lockett. I don't even think it's that close. You're getting Rondale Moore anyway.
Yeah.
To me,
okay.
I think.
Yeah, I guess you've convinced me. I mean, I just see JT as the best player in the deal, and so that's why
I shy away from that a lot. But when I see Kenneth Walker's in the deal, it's not far off.
No.
So then I'm looking at, well, you're saying a slight downgrade to me from Jonathan Taylor to Kenneth Walker. And meanwhile, Jonathan Taylor's really only done it 1 week. We don't know that he's going to keep that up. Kupp is useless. Devontae, I mean, have you seen his last 2 weeks? He has 31 targets.
Yeah, he's averaging 7 receptions and 92 yards a game the last 4 weeks. So.
Okay, and the last 2 weeks, he has 31 targets and 272 yards with 3 touchdowns.
Right. So that also means that, so if those were the average, if that was the last 2 weeks and the average is only like 7 receptions and 90 yards a game over 4 weeks, that means the 2 weeks before that, he must have been
October 30th, he had 1 reception on 5 targets for 3 yards.
There you go.
But that's a very rare thing for him.
What about October 23rd?
October 23rd, he had 9 targets for 8 receptions, 95 yards.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
The time before that, he had 124 yards and 2 touchdowns.
All right, Moke, I'm on board with Dan.
Devontae Adams has broken 100 yards 5 times out of 10 weeks, and he has a total of 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Pounce all over it. I think that's a great trade. All right, Jose Vega says, Lazard or Drake for my flex. 0.5 PPR.
I'm assuming you mean Drake London and not Kenyon Drake. I'm not sure.
I think he means Kenyon Drake, actually. But
then I would PPR.
Actually, probably it's Drake London based on the way the question is. Jose, let's see if we can clarify that, and we'll come back to you. But let's assume it's Drake London, because Kenyon Drake, especially with Gus Edwards coming back, doesn't seem like it would be likely that he would play over Lazard in a half PPR league.
Right. I think I'd play Lazard against either, because like when Rodgers trusts Lazard, he's the only, I mean, he gets the most consistent targets in Green Bay. And you never know. Drake London can either have 3 receptions for 17 yards or 4 receptions for 28 yards and a touchdown. They're not an air it out offense. So whereas Lazard is pretty much the more reliable one to get targets.
Yeah, and that's what you're looking for in anything that has a decent PPR share, is the targets. Okay, we've Big Dog says, okay, thank you. It's great to help you out. Big Dog, keep the questions coming. Albert Mariquin has a piece of news. The Chiefs just placed Mecole Hardman on IR. I have not heard that.
Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney's a great play. It's sad, though, because Mecole Hardman was just coming on. So for, and you know what else is sad? In a dynasty league, I'd want to be dealing for Mecole Hardman right now, and our trade deadline just passed. I wanted to trade for him.
I have
In fact,
him.
you have him.
I have him.
I knew it. Let's talk later in the offseason.
Yes, Moke, if you look at the bottom, he said, what, Kupp isn't coming back? No, they're saying it's a 4-week injury or 6-week injury, somewhere in that range. He had surgery on his ankle yesterday.
He'll be back from injury, but will they play him at that point?
The question is, A, will they play him? Which I don't think they would if they're not in the playoff hunt. Why would you take a chance of letting somebody re-hurt their surgically repaired ankle? And B, will he be back in time for the fantasy playoffs anyway? Like, the fantasy playoffs start week 14 generally. If he's not back till week 16 or 17, he might not be available for your fantasy playoffs anyway. If it's a redraft league, you just have to assume Kupp is out for the season. You have to play as if he's out for the season.
I really do think it's an under 10% chance that Kupp would be back this year. If the Rams were in playoff contention, I'd be talking totally differently. Right? Okay.
Yes.
Adam Weber says, do you guys like Jacoby Meyer or Ryan Suck? Is it a different Meyer?
It is.
Yeah, not Jacoby Meyer. We're talking kickers. Ryan Suckup, rest of the season. That's interesting. We don't get a lot of kicker questions here.
We don't.
Well done, Adam.
Normally I don't pay enough attention to kickers, so that's my fault. He's talking about Jason Myers, by the way, of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, kickers it's just a toss-up. What I would do is go with the matchups, and I wouldn't even worry about like the 2 of these. I would worry about the matchup week to week.
I mean, look, Myers is the number 1 ranked fantasy kicker in football so far this year.
Right. So I think you just go with that. If you're truly just
he's on bye this week, and if it means like you have,
if it means losing, I don't think I would hold him. I've learned my lesson. You hold a kicker, and then they put up a dud the next week. You're like, why did I do that? And then you might even move on from them anyway.
But they both have a bye this week, so it doesn't matter.
Well, between the 2, I would go Myers. Just he's outperformed Suckup. I also think that the Seahawks. This is shocking, but the Seahawks have looked much better.
He's not the number 1 overall player. He's the number 1 available on our waiver wire, Dan. No, he is number 1. He's got 96 points. Tucker has 92. Suckup has 91.
So he is number 1.
So he is number 1.
All right. And listen, you're choosing between. It's a total crapshoot who's gonna win out on this. Go with your gut. That's one thing that I know. Trust your gut, because if you go against it and you lose out, that's gonna be That's going to be very frustrating. Cageonomics says, I don't expect cut back this season. He just had surgery and looking to miss a month. Rams aren't playing for the playoffs.
Yeah, that's kind of what we agree with you, Cageonomics.
Same take, Cageonomics. Good read on it. Okay, Randy Miller says, can't believe they moved the Bills Browns to Detroit. I'm playing against Allen and Diggs. Oh,
that is such horrible news for you. Oh man,
Randy, our thoughts
go
out
for
to
you. Yeah,
and that's the kind of cruel mistress that fantasy football is. It's constantly doing things like that. Well, listen, I would say that I would hope for the best for you, but the real problem is that they didn't move the Browns out of that game. They're still playing the Browns, and that means they're going to do quite well. But I'm hoping.
Well, no, now that you're wearing a Bills shirt, this will be like you have, like, assuming the
that's
Bengals
true.
were going to crush the Browns.
I may have jinxed the Bills for you, Randy.
Dr. Dan might be your best bet here.
You're welcome. If it happens, you know who to thank.
Yes.
All right. Randy Miller also says Elijah Mitchell or Jaylen Warren. By the way, that's another big story, is Elijah Mitchell's role.
I would, if it's a PPR, I might lean Jaylen Warren. But if it'd have to be a full point PPR. If it's a half point, I'm probably going Elijah Mitchell. And if it's not a PPR, I'm definitely going Elijah Mitchell, because, Shanahan made it sound like he wasn't planning on changing that Mitchell's going to get 16 to 18 carries a game. And when he's healthy, he's proven to be a really good running back.
And
really dynamic runner between the tackles. So
I'm pretty sure that the 49ers organization looked at C-Mac and thought, wait, we can make C-Mac better and Elijah Mitchell better by bringing them both in the same backfield.
Well, and I think they're saying, wait, C-Mac has a tendency to get hurt.
Right.
Maybe if we limit his touches, we can increase his longevity and prepare us for the playoffs, because they're in Super Bowl mode right now.
Yeah. I mean, you protect them both in that way. And so for me, Jaylen Warren's coming on, but it's still unclear. I would go Elijah Mitchell, especially. It's not like he surprisingly played a lot of snaps and then we didn't hear anything from Shanahan about it. We heard directly what Shanahan's plan was, and it also makes sense. It's not like they brought in, Derrick Henry and then said, okay, we're going to play Elijah Mitchell half the time. Derrick Henry is a workhorse. I know he got injured last year, but he takes that load all the time. Yep. C-Mac is not. So I think Elijah Mitchell is the way to go there.
So right. Randy asked.
Well, first he thanked me, and I appreciate you thanking me.
Yes.
And fingers crossed for you too. Pulling for you. Okay. Randy Miller asked, Bengals should be the leading game. And I'm going to get to your kicker question again. Randy Miller says Bengals should be leading the game against the Steelers. Game script leans Warren. No.
I'll respond first. I don't think so.
I agree.
For a couple reasons. One, I don't think the Bengals are as big a favorites as everybody believes. Certainly they have the more complete team, but you have to remember TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick are both back for the Steelers this week. That changes their defense entirely. You have to throw out their rankings as a defense, because TJ Watt got hurt in the first game of the season, and every game played totally since then has been without the best pass rusher in football. Well, and so the Bengals also don't have Jamar Chase. And so this could be more of a close game than you think. And the fact that they were able to get Najee Harris almost 100 yards last week with 20 carries means they might think that they can run and control the clock again. And so could the game script mean more Warren? Yes, but I think there's too much risk for that. I want to go with the certainty of touches, and that's Elijah Mitchell.
And I mean, if you look at the record of the Steelers when TJ Watt does play versus doesn't, it is tremendously different. Not only that, but the NFL is just weird. I mean, when the Browns went to play the Bengals, did people think the Browns were going to dominate the Bengals in that game?
Yeah.
No, not at all. I know I didn't. I mean, even when they were up a huge amount, I was like, how are they going to lose this? So, but that's just being a Browns fan. But I think I don't tend to make a lot of decisions based on game script, because things just go haywire in the NFL all the time.
Yeah.
We got a super chat here. Adrian, thank you. Very much appreciated. Jump right up to the top here, Adrian. Drop Cortland Sutton for Kadarius Toney. Ooh.
Yes.
I think yes, too.
I hate to say it because I'm a Cortland Sutton owner in a dynasty league, but let's be honest, Russ isn't cooking. And so Cortland Sutton's value is not anywhere where it could be or should be. And Kadarius Toney is an ascending player going into the end of the season and the playoffs. I would rather have the ascending player. The risk you're going to run into, the biggest risk you have to remember is that Kadarius Toney in the first 25 games of his NFL career with the New York Giants only played in like 3 of them because of injury, or 4 of them. Kadarius Toney is a walking hamstring. And so that's the risk you're going to take. Whereas Cortland Sutton had the ACL injury, which cost him a season. But other than that, has been a durable wide receiver.
All right. Well, thank you for the contribution, Adrian. We appreciate it. And just, to let you guys know, when you do make a super chat contribution, your comment goes right to the top. So if there are a lot of comments coming and you want to get in, go ahead and drop that. Thank you so much, Adrian. We appreciate it. Thank you for your support. Okay, back to Adam Weber. He says, I'm looking at the dome in Tampa Bay, though. I think we're still talking about kickers. And then he had another comment. I don't need the points for my kicker this week. Aha. I'm projected 20 points ahead of my opponent. I'm looking for the best one for the rest of the season in the colder months, which is why I'm leaning stuck up. Okay, I can understand that. I think you do want a warm weather kicker. A dome kicker is best, and Seattle, the weather can get pretty nasty by the end of the year. That makes a lot of sense to me. Go with your gut, Adam. I think you know what you want to do. Go for it. Let us know if you need more about that. Okay. Ross Bob says, what's a good wide receiver to go trade for? All right.
Well, that's
Case.
Well, it depends, on what you're going to be trading, what you're able to trade to get one. I mean, if you're trying to get one at the bargain basement who could end up being viable for you, I don't know who there is. If you could get Jamar Chase because you can sit for 2 weeks while he's out and coast and still make the playoffs and then have an impact number one going into the playoffs, that's obviously great if you could do that. If you're looking for somebody who I think is ascending other than like a Kadarius Toney, I think George Pickens is a great wide receiver to target right now. I think Kenny Pickett is finally showing more of that potential. And I think his favorite target is George Pickens, even though defenses tend to still key on Deontay Johnson because he's so good if you watch them play. So that would be somebody I would look at targeting. Other than that,
here's another one.
That's a hard question.
Well, here's another one. Adrian says, no problem. Thanks for advice. Quick question. Is this swap of Sutton for Toney considering the recent news of Mecole Hardman now out for 4 weeks? Thanks. I do think that Kadarius Toney is a guy to target. He's not a guy that is going to cost you that much because of his track record, but he has a chance to go up. Now, if Mecole Hardman hadn't gotten injured, I would say go after him because he was the one who was starting to show he's rising up the charts there. Let me take a look at some other wide receivers. I still, this guy's, I think, kind of an underrated guy is Devin Duvernay. I think that they're starting to lean on him a bit more.
And especially because Rashad Bateman, I think, was just placed on the IR.
Yeah. So, but listen, I think Devontae Adams is a high-end guy that I would go after. I mean, look at what just happened in that discussion with Kasey. A lot of people they're just not aware of what Devontae Adams is doing because he's not on the Packers anymore. And, the Raiders really don't look that good as a team. But if you look at those stats, they're phenomenal. And you got to go after it.
He said he would be trading. If you look right below that, he said he'd be trading DeAndre Hopkins and either Montgomery or Pierce. Well, I mean, if you're trading Hopkins and then a number one running back, you got to aim higher than George Pickens, because Hopkins is better than Pickens. So maybe that is where you're looking at a Devontae Adams because, I mean, Kyler Murray really enjoys throwing to DeAndre Hopkins.
I think if you're dealing Hopkins and one of those running backs, you can get a high-end guy. And you can
get a Devontae Adams type.
You might be able to get somebody like Stephon Diggs. You don't know. It depends on, I mean, I don't think that's a smart deal for the other manager, but it certainly is possible. Let's see. Moke says, so would you guys trade Kupp, JT, and Donovan Peoples-Jones for Mixon and Devontae? Take the risk? Yeah, I would.
Yes, I probably would.
For the same reason. Before.
Yeah, you're replacing the best wide receiver in football with another number one wide receiver, and JT is not. Mixon is not JT, but Mixon is still a top 10 running back.
He just scored 5 touchdowns pretty recently.
I know.
And I'm not saying I expect that,
right.
but okay. Just Bob says, be warned. I was projected a plus 25 last week. My two TBs, maybe RBs.
QBs.
Oh yes, QBs. Justin Herbert and
Oh no, his 2 running backs. Because then he says below Henry and Kamara.
Oh, okay. There were some typos. I was like, Bear and Camelade. I was like, it's at moments like these that I'm like, did I miss something?
If it's a bear, isn't that like from Carolina many years ago when he was thrown to Steve Smith? Justin.
Yes, exactly.
Or
okay, and favored by 25, lost by 3. Our condolences, Just Bob. But it was Henry and Kamara. And yeah, I mean, it happens in fantasy sports and fantasy football, especially. Don't worry too much about that. So Adrian was saying,
I just picked up Rondale Moore since Cup is out and traded for Amari Cooper.
Okay. Listen, Amari Cooper also is a little bit of a sneaky ad. I'm not saying it is going to work out, but you're talking about a guy who's about to get Deshaun Watson back. Listen, if I had to guess, I think Deshaun Watson is going to be very rusty. I don't think that he's going to start putting up Deshaun Watson numbers, not to mention the fact that the Browns know how to mess up lots of things.
Especially quarterbacks.
But if you can pick up Amari Cooper for cheap right now, why not? It's a big upside play. You're trying to replace Cooper Kupp. You need a big upside play. So I like that. I think that's smart. I mean, I'd be interested to know who else you could have picked up. I don't know if it's a shallow league where there's people on the wire, or if you're talking about the
Rondale Moore is a good pick.
Yeah, and it looks like he picked him up off the wire because he traded for Amari Cooper. So these are good pickups. Well done, Adrian. And then he said, just trying to make something work. And listen, that's fantasy football, isn't it, brother?
Especially in the bye weeks and injury weeks.
Listen, that's what we're all in. We're in the same boat, Adrian. We've all been there. And keep up the good work. Hopefully you make the playoffs. We're pulling for you. Okay, Adam Weber says, appreciate it, guys. One last question. What running back or running backs do you think I could get for Justin Fields? I have Saquon and a bunch of second stringers. Okay, so this is dealing Justin Fields straight up for a running back. Right now, he's got a lot of value. It's going to depend on the league, but go ahead, Case.
Yeah, depending on the league and depending on the other team's quarterback situation. If there's a needy if there's somebody who wants to make the playoffs who waited and got stuck with an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady or Russell Wilson or a Matthew Stafford, and they have depth at running back, I don't see why you couldn't get a Dalvin Cook or an Alvin Kamara type straight up for Justin Fields. I mean, quite frankly, you might even be able to get that and another quarterback back.
Yeah.
Heck, you could find, that Jonathan Taylor's owner needs a quarterback and is not feeling great about Jonathan Taylor's situation, and you could trade that straight up.
Listen, right now, I think for Justin Fields, if you're dealing to a quarterback needy team who's really been getting killed at the quarterback, you could probably get any running back that you want if the teams line up. It's all going to depend on how they line up. So look for a team, let's say, that has 3 great running backs and good wide receiver depth. They might be willing to play a wide receiver at flex, deal you one of those running backs.
Or 2 great running backs, yeah. I mean, look, there's no reason why we talked about him earlier, and Dan and I are both huge fans of Kenneth Walker. I don't see why you couldn't turn him into Kenneth Walker pretty easily and something. Yep. Justin Fields right now is over the last 4 weeks might be the number 1 rated quarterback in football.
Yeah, and I just think the Bears are finally letting him play the way he plays, and I hope they continue to do it. Okay, Ross Bob says, should I trade for Diggs because I'm scared if they play in the snow game? So now we've got some commentary on this. Just Bob says the snow game has been moved to Detroit. It's indoors now, so that does really change things. And then Cajunomics says, hey, Just Bob, yeah, we discussed that. I'm thankful it was moved, but some are disappointed. And some are disappointed because of what's happening to their matchups. But some I think are disappointed because they love to see an old snow game. They just love the old football stuff. Casey, you were looking at something. What did you see?
Well, I'm looking at if you look at Moke's counter.
Let's see. Oh, okay. They got a counter. All right. Hey guys, he countered with JT Lockett Cup for Devontae and Kenneth. What we thinking? So you're not getting Rondale Moore anymore? I still take it.
I guess my question for you, Moke, is who's on the waiver wire? Right? Because you're getting a waiver wire spot. And if there is a KDP or a Donovan Peoples-Jones or a Kadarius Toney or somebody like that I doubt Donovan Peoples-Jones, but you could get a Kadarius Toney or Christian Watson, then I would say yes, I think it's worth it. But as long as there's somebody on the waiver wire who you think that is might not be comparable or the same as Rondale Moore or more valuable, but is comparable, you still make the trade.
Let me add to this. I think you still make the trade even if there isn't a guy on the waiver wire. You know why? Because there's gonna be somebody on the wire. Yeah. Go ahead and open up that roster spot. You're getting the better players as far as I'm concerned, and that's what you want to go for. All right, Cajunomics says, so don't trade Amari Cooper for Toney. Too risky. Cooper's home away splits are a real thing. I'm going to check those out in a second so I can. I'm not saying
Cooper,
not.
I mean, Cooper hasn't been great the last few weeks. Let me just check.
I mean, I don't know that it is too risky. I said Amari Cooper's, was maybe a smart pickup, given what was going on there. In
last 4 weeks, he's averaging less than 5 targets a game.
Right, but his home and away splits. I mean, he truly has. I mean, in his home games, he's had 4 home games and 3 times broken 100 yards. No, 5 home games, 3 times broken 100 yards. He's had a touchdown in every single home game, and not the away games. Now, so his home away splits really are a real thing in terms of the numbers. The question is, are they real in terms of predictability? Like, why is it happening?
Yeah. The only reason I think it's risky is the injury risk to Kadarius Toney. I don't think
the role.
I mean, look, if Cooper's only getting 5 or 6 targets a game, Toney's getting 5 or 6 targets a game when he's playing. So in that respect, there's not a lot of difference between the two, but Kadarius Toney is a unmowed blade of grass away from turf toe type of thing and missing time. And that's what scares me about him, because I was a Giants fan and I watched him never play. He played against New Orleans in his rookie season, looked amazing. And you were like, yay, the future of the slot receiver is here. We have, kind of a Tyreek 2.0. And then I don't know if he played again. Honestly, I just think he's been hurt.
And listen,
now, was Amari he just trying to get out of New York? I don't know.
But Amari Cooper, meanwhile, he's only actually had 1 dud game. I mean, actually, that's not true. I suppose he had 2 dud games because he had the Atlanta game. I don't understand what was going on there. But the one game that looks like a dud, that looks a little more like a dud, was he had 44 yards and a touchdown. And you could say, well, maybe he got lucky there. But he had 12 targets in that game. That was the New England game. And New England's also a tough defense. I think Amari Cooper is an underrated commodity. I think you go ahead and get him. I don't think you trade him for Kadarius Toney. I do think that is too risky. All right. Adrian said, it's an 8-man league. I have Kupp, Cooper, Rondale, Sutton, Devontae Smith, but have a lot of running back depth. I have Pierce, Walker, Chubb. Wow, you have a lot of running back depth.
Yes,
Pierce, Walker, Chubb,
trade.
And Swift. I could trade Pierce for Debo if I wanted to.
I would do it. I know Debo hasn't been the same player this year, but
you got to do it. I mean,
I don't think there's any doubt that you do it.
Yeah, it's lateral at worst, don't you think?
Yeah,
given the depth.
How many flex spots do you have? I mean, if you're only
this is an 8-man league, remember?
Yeah, but I don't know how many flex spots he's had. That's what I'm asking.
True, right.
Because you can only play 3 running backs at most typically. So and you're not going to play Pierce over Walker, Chubb, or maybe Swift. We know how Dan feels about Swift.
Especially when
if Swift is hurt, then maybe then it's tougher. But yeah, because you can't rely. I mean, Kupp is out, and
I think
the other ones aren't reliable enough. Number ones, Debo at least gives you somebody who's a target number one receiver.
You lost Kupp. You really need to replace him with a wide receiver 1 if you can. If you're going to stack up against other teams, I think you go ahead and do it. Okay, Just Bob says, and I don't know if this is a typo, but this makes it sound like he's kind of wasted. All right. I'm kind of wasted picking up Knox, hoping they were playing in the snow. Okay, so I think he meant it's a waste of a pickup, hoping they were playing in the snow. And
you never know. I mean, Knox has had big games before too.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Cageonomics is weighing in on the Moke deal, which was this was JT and Lockett and Cup for Devontae and Kenneth.
Yeah.
I think we're all on board with it at this point. Okay, Moke then says, I have Donovan Peoples-Jones and Watson, Christian Watson. I mean, there's Paris Campbell and Pacheco. All right.
I
still think you do it.
I still think you do it. I think
Paris he's Campbell, talking about a flex for this, though, Case.
Yeah. I'm playing 2 wide receivers and 3 running backs. I have Joe Burrow and Mark Andrews as tight end. I'm not a huge Pacheco. Pacheco's been given the lead back role, allegedly, in Kansas City. Kansas City hasn't had a lead back do much since Jamal Charles, I think, many years ago. I think Kareem Hunt had a few good games, and then he got let go because of his off-the-field issues. So I'm not a huge Pacheco guy. I like Paris Campbell more than Dan because I like Matt Ryan likes to throw the quick 3-step slants and 3-step outs, and that's what Paris Campbell excels at. So he could be sneaky better than Watson. I mean, but DPJ, if that's who you're thinking of, who you have also, if you're giving up Lockett and not getting Rondale Moore, I think you're fine.
All right, I'm gonna weigh in a second. Just Bob says I'm not wasted. I promise. I didn't think you were. It didn't seem like you. Just texting issues. LOL. All right, glad we clarified that. So I think Donovan Peoples-Jones and Watson. This to me is a lot about, do you need the big upside or not? If you need the big upside, you go ahead and play Watson, even though it's a Thursday game, which sucks. That's not ideal. But if you need the floor, I'd go Donovan Peoples-Jones this week, even as a Browns fan, which is hard to.
I would definitely go Donovan Peoples-Jones this week because it's going to be a throwing game. I don't think.
Yeah. I think so. Although you never know with the Browns. Adrian says, just one flex. I'm playing. I see. Sorry. This was Adrian. We combined 2 things. So he has only one flex. He was answering you about your question. Just Bob, I had a feeling about this, the way you responded. 13 years sober. One of my very best friends is one of my very best friends is an AA. I'm a big fan of AA. So congrats to you. That's big. Yeah, Adrian, thanks again for the tip. We really appreciate it. Guys, if you can keep that coming, it really does support our network. It's so much fun being here with you guys. Keep the questions coming, guys. We have a couple more weeks until we get to the fantasy football playoffs. Then there's still going to be people in the playoffs who want to know what do we do here? And then we're not going away anyway. We got some fantasy basketball to tide us over. We'll talk about lots of other things. And then we hit February. We're going to start talking baseball. Adrian says, thanks, guys. Great show. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Yeah, you guys were awesome today. Thank you.
You guys are awesome. It is fantastic. Case, thanks so much for being here with me. Our thoughts go out to Ross the Boss. He'll be back here next week. So it's always Thursdays, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Wait, we have one last comment. We'll squeeze it in. Joseph Gurgis says, half PPR. I'm 7-3, so locked into the playoffs, but not guaranteed the bye week. Could do T. Higgins for Jamar Chase. I think you do it. I think you do it. It's an interesting deal because
it is because I mean, who are your other? I mean, are you punting the next 2 weeks if you make that trade? Are you pretty much?
Oh wait, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Not guaranteed the bye week. I would not do it.
I would want to get the bye week because you never know what condition Jamar Chase is going to come back in after a hip injury.
Fantasy football is dangerous every single week. Any week you cannot play in advance, do it. I would keep T. Higgins. I understand the itch to do it, but I wouldn't take that chance. Imagine you lose in that round that could have been a bye week, and let's say it's because of T. Higgins versus Jamar Chase. You're not going to be happy about it. Stick with T. Higgins. The upgrade's not, plus the risk isn't worth it to me. Now, Joseph Gurgis did say, I have A.J. Brown, C.D., Higgins, and Pickens. All right, well, you do have very good receivers. Yeah. I understand being tempted. So given that, it depends on how many you have to start, because now we're talking about starting Pickens over Higgins while you're waiting for Chase. I don't think that's so bad. All right, we'll get one last question in here. Mo Diesel says, starter defense, Bears, Packers, Vikings. Who do you got, Case?
I definitely don't have the Packers tonight against Tennessee because they've been giving up like 5 yards per carry to running backs the last 4 weeks. And then here comes Derrick Henry rolling into town. I could see that not going their way pretty well. I would probably go with the Vikings against Dallas because, quite frankly, Dallas's defense is pretty stacked, but I'm not that impressed by their offense. The Vikings got a few interceptions against the Bills last week. You know, they're 8-1 on the season and an underdog going into Dallas or going against Dallas. I just think they're going to play better. The who knows what's going to happen in the Bears Falcons game. That's just too unpredictable for me. You know, they traded away Roquan Smith, their best tackling linebacker. You know, they're not really competing on defense all that well. So if I had to pick, I'd probably go with the Vikings. Although,
Yeah,
I might
I
prefer
also,
who's on the waiver wire.
when in doubt, I do think it's an underrated strategy to just go with a home team with a semi-decent matchup. It's amazing how much home field advantage matters in this. Joseph Gurgis says, thanks, guys. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for watching. Just Bob says, awesome show today, guys. Much love, Ross. Take care, everyone. Let's go. We will leave on that note, guys. We will see you same time next week, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Kasey, thank you for being here with me.
Great show, Daniel.
You too. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.